everybody! Easter is one of my favorite holidays, and this year we're celebrating the ways Jesus showed us real love. Understanding how to love and be loved in the realest way possible is probably one of the most important things that we can do. And that may be super important to me, but it may not feel that way to you. And that's okay, because we all have different ideas of what we consider to be super important. Let me show you what I mean. I asked a few of my friends to share what's most important to them in their everyday life.
The most important thing to me, of course, after my relationship with the Lord, is NBA basketball. More specifically, the Boston Celtics.
To be the best husband and the best role model for my 3 boys. And slightly under that, for the Braves to win the World Series this year.
Definitely my family.
Being a good friend. Taylor Swift.
See what I mean? We all have different ideas on what's most important to us. And that can make knowing what's really important a little confusing at times. Okay, one thing I think that we can all agree on, it's nice to feel important from time to time, right? See, growing up, I had these 3 sisters and they were like so good at everything and I wasn't. I always just kind of felt like, I don't know, there was nothing that I was super good at except for baking. But I mean, what kind of skill is baking? When you have a sister who has a photographic memory and like one sister who's like a beauty queen and all I'm over here is like baking cookies. But I joined the 4-H club and they were like, if you can bake a really good cookie, you can put it in a bake-off. Friends, I got so excited. I baked all these chocolate chip cookies and I took them to the fair and I won! Just kidding, I probably shouldn't say it like that. I won! Y'all, you don't know what it's like to walk into the fair and see the cookies that you made because that's not a really big deal. And then there was a trophy next to them. I finally felt important. I finally felt like I was good at something. Have you ever been there? Like people knew that you were a really big deal, like you were seen and noticed and like valued by everybody around. In case you didn't know, your student ministry is a place where you are seen and valued. And come a little closer. No, come on over here. You're also super important. And I think that matters a lot because if we're honest, we'd all probably say there are places in our lives that we don't feel important. And friends, that feeling, it just stinks. My sisters, the ones I was telling you about, my oldest sister is a beauty queen. I'm next. The sister after me, photographic memory, straight A's all day long. And then there's the youngest. And if you're the youngest in your family, you know, like you're always the best kid ever. Me, I was in the middle. I felt so invisible in my family next to all of my sisters that can do these amazing things. Now, I can't be the only one that's ever felt that way. Can we just pause for a quick second? I want to acknowledge that you are probably feeling that way right now. You're remembering a time that you felt unimportant. We all know how it feels to be left out, forgotten, and unseen. It's not a feeling that any of us want to experience. Now, of course, I could sit here all day and tell you how valuable and cared about you are and how seen you are. And I'd be right because it's true. But the reality is, just because I say it doesn't mean you have to believe it. It doesn't change the fact that sometimes our thoughts and our circumstances and even the people around us make us feel unimportant. So the question is, what can we do about it? We are in the Easter season. We're taking time to talk about the most important event in the Christian faith that we look back on every year, Jesus' death and resurrection. To start, let's see what an incredible woman named Mary Magdalene had to do with it. You know, it's a pretty big deal that we can talk about Mary Magdalene, or any other woman really, in the Bible today, because unfortunately, at that time, in Jesus' time, women didn't have a lot of rights or freedoms or opportunities. And that's a big part of what made Jesus so interesting. In a culture that gave women fewer rights, fewer leadership roles, just fewer opportunities in general, Jesus went out of his way to value women. In fact, we know that Jesus greatly valued Mary Magdalene, knew her well, and saw her as important. We know this because some of Jesus' closest followers, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, record it for us in the Bible. Because Jesus was so close to Mary Magdalene, she's included in the story we read every year at Easter. She's part of the event that shapes our Christian faith. Let's take a look at it. Mary was standing outside the tomb crying, and as she wept, she stooped and looked in. She saw two white-robed angels, one sitting at the head and the other at the foot of the place where the body of Jesus had been lying. "Dear woman, why are you crying?" the angels asked her. "Because they have taken away my Lord," she replied, "and I don't know where they have put him." I think we have to pause really quick and acknowledge that Mary was probably super freaked out, one, because her friend wasn't there, but two, the angels. I mean, that had to scare her a little bit. See, Jesus had just been crucified on a cross, which is a horrible and public death that friends like Mary Magdalene had to witness. Then Jesus was buried in a tomb, but because she cared so much for him, Mary went to visit Jesus' grave. What did she find when she got there? Not Jesus. The tomb was totally empty except for those two angels. Y'all, she must have been so confused. Mary started crying and wondering where her friend's body had been taken. And then something happened that changed things, not just for Mary, but for all of us who believe in Jesus. Take a look. She turned to leave and saw someone standing there. It was Jesus, but she didn't recognize him. "Dear woman, why are you crying?" Jesus asked her. "Who are you looking for?" She thought he was the gardener. "Sir," she said, "if you have taken him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will go and get him." "Mary," Jesus said. She turned to him and cried out, "Rabboni," which is Hebrew for teacher. So there was Mary weeping over the death of her friend and teacher, when just like that, a person appeared. Now, of course, thinking Jesus was dead, she didn't recognize that it was him at first, but then Jesus used Mary's name and she immediately knew it was him. I mean, can you imagine how shaken up Mary had to be? I mean, Jesus had just risen from the dead. And friends, that's what we celebrate at Easter. It's the resurrection. To resurrect something means to bring it back to life. At Easter, we remember when Jesus died on a cross, was buried in a tomb, and then we celebrate that he walked out of the tomb 3 days later. Jesus spent years telling his followers that his death and resurrection was coming and that these events would change everything. And then it actually happened. And because of that, we can believe all the things Jesus promised us are true. We can walk confidently knowing that we can be with God now and forever. Jesus' resurrection is the evidence that proves we can trust what he says is true. That's what makes Easter so important. One of the reasons we know this important thing happened is because Mary was there to see it with her own eyes. Then she followed through on an important task. Take a look. "Don't cling to me," Jesus said, "for I haven't yet ascended to the Father. But go find my brothers and tell them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene found the disciples and told them, "I have seen the Lord." Then she gave them his message. Mary was the first person to witness the resurrection. She's also the person Jesus asked to share the news with his closest followers. Y'all, talk about an important job. She's one of the reasons we have a record of those moments still today. And that makes her an important piece of the most important event in our faith, Jesus' resurrection. Maybe you feel like Mary Magdalene, like you haven't been treated like you're important. Maybe you feel like nobody else notices or understands you. And maybe you feel God would never choose you or love you. What we celebrate every year at Easter proves that you're not only important, but you're important to God. God sent Jesus to live a perfect life, die, and come back to life so that you can experience life to the fullest, starting now. All because of God's love for you, because you are important. If there's one thing I want you to remember today, it's this. Jesus treats everyone like they're important. Your life has value and meaning. You are who Jesus died for. And that's so important, both at Easter and far beyond it. Jesus treats everyone like they're important. He chose somebody unexpected like Mary Magdalene to help spread the word about the resurrection. And the same can be true for us. We can find our value and importance in Jesus. How do we begin to do that? Well, I think we start by asking 3 questions. The first question is, do you believe you are important? Now, forget what everyone else thinks or says or does. Forget about your status or your circumstances. What do you believe is true about you? Do you see yourself as important? If so, great. If not, I'm here to remind you about a few things that are true about you. You are special. You are valuable. You are loved. Jesus died for you, not because he had to, but because he cares for you. That means you're more important than you may ever know. Second question, do you live like others are important? See, one of the most important things that we can do this Easter is show Jesus' love to others. We can start by treating others with the same value that Jesus did. We can show people they're important by listening to them, welcoming them, standing up for them. Learning their names, even saying hello. Doing that not only shows them that we care, but it gives them a glimpse of God's love through us. All right, third question. How can you remember this real love is really for you? To God, you're seen and known and valued. Jesus' death and resurrection shows us that. So, when you struggle to see your value and your worth, ask God to remind you that this real love is for you. Ask God to show you that your importance can always be found in God's love. Remember, Jesus treats everyone like they're important, and one of the best places to practice believing and treating others in the same way is in this youth group and in your small group. You have a leader who sees you and values you and believes that you are so important. Someone who wants to help you not only begin to believe this about yourself, but to show it to other people.